welcome. My name is Benhasread, and in today's video we are taking a look at feral children. And no, I don't mean your 7-year-old cousin who hisses and bites anybody who tries to take away their iPad. I am talking about children who grew up in the wild, often with some furry companions. They spend the most important developmental years of their life completely shut off from humanity, which obviously leads to some interesting behaviour as well as stories. To start off with, we have the absolute unit of a boy, Ivan Mashukov. He lived completely feral in Russia for 2 years of his life, from the ages of 4 to 6. He immediately made an incredible decision, one that probably saved his life. He gave some spare food to dogs that he had found in the street. He was quickly adopted by these dogs into their pack, spending most of his 2 years with them. Somehow, Ivan even became the leader of the pack. A 4-year-old, the leader of a dog pack. I really don't know how on earth that happened, but it did. He even managed to escape the police 3 separate times with the help of his canine companions, before finally being captured when police put some bait in the middle of a restaurant, which separated Ivan from his pack. After his capture, Ivan was able to relearn Russian, a feat which is really rare among feral children. Usually, children who live in the wild miss a crucial period of language development and are unable to speak, read or write for the rest of their lives. But not Ivan, he's just a unit. This mad lad then enlisted in the Russian military. Oh my god, Ivan is incredible. Although, I wonder what happened to the dogs. Speaking of dogs, another child which was raised by a different pack was Oksana Malaya. Born in Ukraine, she was feral for around 4.5 years, from the ages of 3 to 7.5, being neglected by her alcoholic parents and essentially being raised by the dogs. When she was found by authorities, she couldn't talk, she walked on all fours, she growled and barked like a dog, as well as taking care of her hygiene like a dog. After being removed from her parents, she was placed inside a foster home, and spent many years in therapy and education. This resulted in her being able to suppress her dog-like tendencies, as well as luckily being able to speak, although unfortunately throughout her life she has remained intellectually impaired. Currently, she works at a farm milking cows, as doctors state that she is unable to be reintroduced into society. Despite this, she has given numerous interviews and often speaks about her boyfriend, as well as her desire to find her biological mother. I'm really glad that things worked out for her. Moving on from dogs, but not too far, we have Dina Sanichar. Not much is known about Dina's early life, except that he was found in India in a cave when he was 6 years old, surrounded by wolves. Badass. He was taken to Sakandra Mission Orphanage, where he was given the name Sanichar in a stroke of genius and ingenuity. Because he arrived on a Saturday. He could not speak, and he could only actually make noises that were similar to that of a wolf. He lived among humans for another 20 years, never learning how to speak again, instead becoming an extremely heavy smoker, as was typical for the time. Unfortunately, this didn't help him when he developed tuberculosis, and died at the age of 35 or 34 depending on the source. Not all the children have happy endings. Next, we continue with wolves, with the one, the only, Marcos Rodriguez Pandoja. His early life was terrible. Born in Spain, he came from an extremely poor and abusive family, and was eventually sold to a Hamitic goat shepherd when he was 7. When the shepherd passed away, Marcos was left to completely fend for himself, being found 11 years later with a large group of wolves. He was captured, and upon his biological father being taken to court for obvious reasons, his only comment to his son was that Marcos had lost his jacket. Well, what a dickhead. He was taken in by nuns, and as he was 7 by the time he went feral, he had already gone through much of his development. Marcos was able to relearn Spanish, how to dress and walk upright, as well as how to use a knife and fork. I don't know why that's specified, but it is. He was reintroduced to society, living at a hostel where he paid by working, before enlisting in the military for a while. What is it with feral children and the military? Before becoming a pastor. He was often taken advantage of by his wife financially, as he didn't have a lot of cultural or financial sense, having grown up in the wild. This meant that he spent years in and out of housing, as well as a cave at one point, before finally moving to a small village and being sponsored by a Dutch family. Nowadays, he's readjusted to society, but he still has an aversion to people and cities, much preferring wild animals and wildlife. He's also remarked that living with humans is much worse than living with animals, and he's able to understand them with ease, being like some sort of superhero. A lot less is known about the next person, known as Peter the Wild Boy. This is maybe because he was born in the 1700s, quite a while ago, and when found could only walk on all fours, was uncivilized and could not speak. But what's unique is that he was found by a hunting party in Hanover, led by King George I of Great Britain and Ireland. What are the chances? But King George didn't do anything with Peter. In fact, it was only when his daughter-in-law, Caroline of Ansbach, gave the order that anything was done with the boy. Luckily, Caroline took a special interest in Peter. She had him put under the care of Dr. Arbuthnot. Unfortunately, any attempts to treat or teach Peter anything completely failed, and the doctor was forced to give up. Peter then was in and out of many houses and farms for years, before finally ending up in Broadway Farm, where he would spend the rest of his life, though not without some hiccups along the way. In the summer of 1751, Peter went missing, and it wasn't until a fire broke out in the parish of Norwich in October, and the local gaol set on fire, that Peter emerged from the smoke, having been a prisoner. He was remarked as being extraordinarily strong, as well as making noises like that of an orangutan, scaring the other hardened inmates. He was soon returned to the farm, and a leather collar with his name and details on was put on him at all times, in case he went missing again. But he didn't. In the end, Peter lived around 70 years, in his old age being described as having a healthy complexion as well as a massive white beard. By the time of his death, he could only say the words Peter and King George, as well as humming the tunes to a few songs. What makes Peter's story even more remarkable though, was that he lived his entire life and his childhood in the wild, whilst having an extremely rare genetic disorder called Pitt-Hopkins syndrome. This disorder may help to explain why he was left in the wild in the first place, why he was unable to learn or socialise, and why the events of his life took place the way they did. A painting of Peter the Wild Boy can today be found in Kensington Palace, which originally was placed in King George I's court. Finally, we have the hardest to believe story out of all of them, Heini Istok. Found in Hungary in 1749 when he was around 8 to 10 years old. He is unique among the list of children in this video, being that he lived semi-aquatically. When he was found, he was described as being naked with a thick crust over all of his skin, and webbed hands with a layer of fur all over. I find it really hard to believe that an 8 to 10 year old was covered completely in fur, but the other parts could be true. He was also apparently able to capture fish while underwater with his bare hands. That's pretty cool, I don't know. Upon being captured, he was immediately baptised, because that's just kind of how things are done, I guess. And then he was taken to a castle. He could not speak or talk, and his owners didn't care to teach him, subjecting him to abuse and treating him like a slave. He would only ever eat grass, raw fish, and frogs. Despite his mistreatment, he always had one defender, the daughter of the bailiff, Juliska. She treated Heini with kindness and often looked after him. When she got married, Heini, in an attempt of kindness, poured a bowl of live frogs onto the wedding table. He was subsequently beaten as they didn't take too kindly to his gift. The next morning, Heini was gone, and unlike his previous attempts which had been thwarted by people or by hunting dogs, Heini remained free, returning to life by the water, only ever being seen once more 4 years later by some random fishermen, and never being seen again, becoming a figure of folklore and myth, the Fishman. Thank you for watching this video. If you enjoyed, please consider leaving a like and subscribing, it would really help me out. Anyways, that's enough from me. Until I see you next, bye bye.